I never thought I'd watch my own sister stand there, frozen, terrified, while HOA Karen forced her to switch off my disabled daughter's oxygen tank. It all happened in seconds right on our porch while my little girl gasped for air, her tiny hands shaking, her eyes begging for help. And Karen, she just smiled. Her sunglasses reflected my daughter's fear like it was entertainment. Worst part, she thought I wasn't home. She thought nobody was watching. But I stood silently behind the living room curtain, watching my own sister crumble under Karen's threats, watching my daughter fight for air, watching my entire world fall apart because of a woman who wanted peace and quiet in the neighborhood. She had no idea who I was, or what I was capable of. And this was the moment everything changed. Before I start this story, I want to ask you something. Which city are you watching my video from? Drop your city in the comments. I love seeing where my community is tuning in from across the USA. And hey, before we jump deep into this unbelievable and painful story, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories like this. True, emotional, twist-filled, and exposing the truth about people who hide behind fake smiles and HOA rules. Now, let me take you straight to the moment everything went wrong. I won't delay you with unnecessary build-up because the story you came for already started with the scene in the title. The moment Karen forced my own sister, my gentle, soft-spoken sister, to turn off the oxygen tank that keeps my daughter alive. My daughter, Mia, is 8 years old, wheelchair-bound, and depends on supplemental oxygen to breathe safely. We moved into this community hoping for peace, hoping for support, hoping for kindness. Instead, we met Karen, a woman obsessed with silence, control, and neighborhood standards, who believed everything, even children, should obey her rules. What happened next didn't just expose Karen. It exposed loyalty, betrayal, and the terrifying truth about the people we trust the most. So, let's start from the exact moment it all began, and how one decision nearly cost my daughter her life. My daughter Mia was sitting in her wheelchair on our front porch, enjoying the crisp morning air, wrapped in her lavender blanket, the one she always clutches when she feels anxious. Her oxygen tank stood upright beside her, humming softly, the rhythmic sound reassuring her that breathing wouldn't be a battle today. My sister Lena was watching her for a few minutes while I showered. She's always been patient with Mia, speaking to her gently, braiding her hair, telling her stories to distract her from the discomfort she faces every day. But that morning, something felt off the moment I woke up. The house felt tense, heavy, like the air itself knew what was coming. When I heard voices outside, sharp and irritated, I instinctively moved toward the living room window. And there she was, HOA Karen, standing at the bottom of our porch steps in her usual uniform, royal blue HOA shirt with golden yellow trim, and her ever-present clipboard, glaring up like she owned the whole neighborhood. She jabbed her finger toward Mia's oxygen tank, her expression icy. I couldn't hear every word clearly through the window, but the venom in her tone was unmistakable. "This noise," she snapped. "This machine. It's disturbing the neighborhood ambience." Lena tried to speak calmly, explaining that the oxygen tank wasn't optional, it kept Mia alive. But Karen didn't care. She stepped closer, towering over Lena, weaponizing her authority like a blade. "Turn it off," she demanded. I felt my breath hitch. My heart slammed against my ribs. Did she just? Mia's eyes widened, her breathing already shaky from the stress. "She's too loud," Karen continued, her voice dripping with entitlement. "If she needs all this equipment, keep her inside. The porch is for aesthetics, not medical displays." Lena hesitated, looking torn. She knew what Mia needed. She knew what the oxygen tank meant. But Karen leaned in, whispering something I couldn't hear, something that made my sister's face drain of all color. Maybe it was a threat. Maybe it was blackmail. Maybe it was fear of fines, fear of confrontation, fear of becoming a target. Whatever it was, Lena's hands trembled as she reached toward the oxygen valve. I felt frozen. My body refused to move, even as every instinct screamed at me to run outside and stop her. But part of me needed to see how far Karen would go. Part of me needed to understand the depth of cruelty my sister was facing. When Lena turned the knob, Mia gasped, first softly, then sharply, her chest tightening, her breaths becoming shallow, rapid, desperate. Her small hand reached for her sister, then toward the tank, then toward nothing as panic overtook her. Karen watched, almost satisfied. She crossed her arms, tapping her foot, like this was some punishment she believed Mia deserved. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The kind of snap that doesn't heal. The kind that turns fear into fire. And as I stepped toward the front door, ready to confront them both, I knew the world would never be the same after this moment. The moment I burst through the front door, the world snapped into motion so violently it felt like the earth itself tilted. My sister Lena jumped back like she'd been caught committing a crime, her trembling hands flying away from the oxygen tank valve as if it burned her. Mia gasped hard, clutching her chest, her tiny shoulders rising and falling in shallow, rapid movements that made my own lungs ache in sympathy. I rushed to her side, flipping the valve back on before even speaking a word, praying the oxygen flow would stabilize fast enough. Her soft, desperate wheezes filled the air like a plea for survival. I placed my hand on her head and whispered, "I'm here, baby. Breathe. Please breathe," even though my voice was shaking. When I turned around, fury flooded my veins so intensely I swear I felt heat radiating from my skin. Karen didn't flinch. She stood there on my porch like she belonged there, like she hadn't just tried to suffocate a child for neighborhood aesthetics. My voice came out sharper than steel. "Are you out of your mind?" She blinked slowly, arrogantly, adjusting her sunglasses as if the sun offended her more than her own actions offended humanity. "Your daughter is disrupting the peace of the community," she said calmly, almost robotically, as though she were reading HOA rulebook lines engraved into her cold, shrinking heart. "I'm within my rights to request noisy equipment be turned off when outdoors." Noisy equipment. She was talking about the machine, keeping my child alive. Lena stood behind me, shaking so hard her teeth nearly chattered. Tears streaked her cheeks, but she didn't dare speak. And that's when Karen shifted her attention to her. "I told your sister what would happen if you people kept ignoring regulations," she said, narrowing her eyes. "You people." The words hit differently, and suddenly, puzzle pieces began sliding into place. Lena had been complaining for weeks about Karen cornering her whenever she visited, asking invasive questions, warning her about violations, threatening fines she couldn't afford. Karen had found her weakness, fear, and she exploited it. "She forced you?" I asked Lena, quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. Lena swallowed hard. Her eyes filled with guilt and panic. She whispered. She said she'd report me to the HOA for trespassing and suspend your visitor privileges. And she said Mia's equipment violates outdoor rules. Karen smirked, pleased that her intimidation had worked. "Exactly," she chimed. "This community is built on order. Your daughter is medically fragile, fine. But that doesn't mean she gets to disrupt everyone else's day. Keep her inside where she belongs." Where she belongs. The word sliced straight through my chest. My daughter, a child who had already suffered enough in life, was being told she didn't deserve sunlight, fresh air, or the simple pleasure of sitting on a porch. Something inside me snapped so violently, I felt like I was vibrating. I took a step toward Karen, and she instinctively stepped back, her bravado flickering for the first time. "Let me be perfectly clear," I growled, my voice low and controlled in a way that scared even me. "If you ever touch my daughter's oxygen tank again, if you ever speak to my sister like that, if you ever come near my family, you will regret it." She scoffed, but I could see her throat tighten. Bullies only feel powerful when no one stands up to them. So I kept going. "You think I don't know the law? ADA protections? Federal disability regulations? HOA rules don't override basic human rights. And your little threats." I leaned closer. "They mean nothing." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but I raised a finger sharply, silencing her. Then I did something she didn't expect at all. I held my phone. It was already recording, her face drained of color. Because everything from her forcing Lena to turn off the oxygen tank, to her threats, to her discrimination, was captured on video through the window. I spoke slowly, deliberately. Congratulations, Karen. You're now the star of a criminal investigation. Her mouth fell open. You can't— Oh, I interrupted. And I will. This is endangerment, coercion, discrimination, and reckless assault on a medically fragile child. You think you run this neighborhood? After today, you'll be lucky if you're allowed to run your own front lawn. She tried to regain her confidence, lifting her chin. The HOA will back me up. I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Honey, after what you just did, they'll throw you under the bus so fast your clipboard won't even catch up. For the first time, she looked scared. Truly scared. She turned, muttering something about lawyers, and stormed off the porch. As soon as she was gone, Lena collapsed onto the step, sobbing. I'm so sorry, she cried. I didn't want to hurt Mia. She threatened me. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I wrapped my arms around her. Because even though what happened shattered me, I knew Lena wasn't the villain. She was another victim of Karen's cruelty. We're going to fix this, I told her. We're going to expose her. And no one will ever hurt Mia again. But just as I said it, Mia tugged weakly on my sleeve. Her eyes were still watery, but she managed to whisper, Mom, why did she want my air gone? And that question, so innocent, so heartbreaking, ignited a fire in me that would burn through the entire neighborhood before I let anyone hurt her again. News in our neighborhood travels faster than wildfire in a dry forest, and by the next morning the entire street buzzed with whispers, half-truths, and wide-eyed shock. But none of it compared to what happened when my video— yes, the recording of Karen forcing Lena to turn off Mia's oxygen tank spread through the community Facebook group. It wasn't something I meant to post publicly at first, but after a night filled with Mia, waking up crying, gasping, and asking if that mean lady would come back to steal her air again, something inside me snapped. By dawn, I uploaded the footage with a caption that simply read, "This is what HOA power abuse looks like. My child almost died." The reactions were immediate. Within minutes, shocked comments flooded the thread. People who had been too afraid to speak up before suddenly opened up like floodgates. She threatened my teenage son last month over his skateboard. She fined us $200 for leaving a pumpkin outside after Halloween. She screamed at my elderly father for walking too slowly on the sidewalk. She told my autistic nephew he made the neighborhood look messy when he played with chalk. I scrolled through every comment, my blood boiling. The sheer number of people Karen had bullied was staggering, and for the first time, the community was finally seeing the truth, not the polished, respectable HOA board member she pretended to be, but the monster she hid beneath the blue uniform with golden trim. Then came the messages, private DMs from neighbors who wanted to apologize for not standing up sooner, who wanted to support us, who wanted to know how Mia was recovering. Even people who had sided with the HOA in the past suddenly flipped like switches. It wasn't guilt, they were angry, furious, outraged that someone would go after a disabled child. And Mia was the heart of this neighborhood. She always waved at everyone from her wheelchair, handing out small drawings she colored, saying "Have a happy day" in her soft little voice. People adored her. Seeing her terrified and struggling for breath had struck the community at its core. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mrs. Henderson from down the street, holding a casserole in one hand and tissues in the other. "I am so sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "If I had known what she was doing to you all, I would have helped sooner." Behind her, 3 more neighbors waited, holding flowers, gift bags, and notes for Mia. And behind them, more neighbors waited, like a line forming to pay respects after a tragedy. It was overwhelming, but heartwarming. And it wasn't just sympathy, they came with stories, receipts, screenshots, evidence. Apparently, Karen had built her position of fear by twisting rules, forging warnings, inflating fines, and even reporting false violations to homeowners she personally disliked. And because most people had no idea of their rights, they accepted her lies as official HOA law. By 4 p.m., my living room looked like a war room. Neighbors gathered, some pacing, some flipping through documents, others replaying parts of the video on their phones with disgust. "We need to remove her from the board," someone said. "No, she needs to be criminally charged," another argued. "Both," I said firmly. And for the first time, everyone agreed. But while the community rallied around us, the HOA board itself was suspiciously silent. Not one comment, not one call, not one apology. It felt deliberate, like they were meeting behind closed doors, deciding whether to protect their reputation or throw Karen to the wolves. I didn't have to wait long for an answer. Later that evening, 3 board members walked up to my door, Ms. Rowley, Mr. Grant, and a new guy I'd never seen before. Their faces looked tight, stressed, almost fearful. I invited them inside, but they stayed on the porch, like entering my home might imply responsibility. Cowards. "We saw the video," Mr. Grant began stiffly. "And while it is concerning, we need to verify," I cut him off. "Verify what?" "You saw her force my sister to turn off my daughter's life support." Ms. Rowley flinched. "We understand your frustration, but HOA matters must be handled internally." I laughed, a cold, hard laugh that made even the neighbors watching from across the street step closer. "Internally, she almost killed my daughter." "Accusations like that can escalate liability," she murmured nervously. "We want to ensure the HOA does not face legal." "Legal?" I said sharply. "You're worried about legal liability? Not about the child who almost suffocated?" Their silence said everything. They weren't protecting Karen, they were protecting themselves. But what they didn't know was that the community wasn't on their side anymore. People were gathered in clusters outside, watching, recording, listening. And when Mr. Grant muttered something about policy review, the crowd erupted. "She needs to resign," shouted a neighbor. "Press charges. Remove her now. If you protect her, you're just as guilty." The pressure was suffocating them. Mr. Grant tugged at his collar. "We will look into immediate suspension." "Not enough," someone yelled. "We want accountability." That's when the quiet man, someone who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke. "I'm new on the board," he said softly, "but I've already seen discrepancies in some of Karen's reports. I think she has been abusing her position. If you'll allow me, I'll push for an emergency removal vote." The crowd erupted in cheers. I nodded at him, appreciating his courage. "Do it," I said, "before someone else gets hurt." But even as hope flickered through the neighborhood, a sharp unease settled in my stomach. Because I knew Karen, and she wasn't the type to sit back quietly and accept defeat. Somewhere, behind her tinted windows, she was plotting, rehearsing her lies, preparing her revenge. And I knew, deep in my gut, that the worst from Karen hadn't even begun yet. The following morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach, one of those heavy, instinctive feelings that warn you something big is coming. And I was right. At exactly 7:42 a.m., 2 police cruisers slowly rolled into our neighborhood. Not speeding, not blasting sirens, moving with that deliberate, authoritative pace that tells everyone watching, we're here for something serious. Curious neighbors peeked from windows. A few stepped outside with coffee mugs, pretending to get fresh air, but really trying to witness history. Because for the first time in the long reign of HOA Karen, the law had arrived at her doorstep. I stood in my living room holding Mia, who clung to me like a frightened kitten, her oxygen tank humming gently beside us. I didn't call the police, at least not yet, but someone else had. Maybe it was the new board member, maybe another frightened parent, or maybe a neighbor who'd finally had enough. Either way, when the officers approached Karen's house, my heart pounded with a mix of relief, fear, and anticipation. Karen stepped outside, wearing her HOA uniform again, the royal blue shirt with golden yellow trim, the black pants, and of course her signature sunglasses. Like armor she believed made her untouchable. But there was something different today. Her lips were tight, her brows tense, her confidence cracked. The officers spoke to her for several minutes. We couldn't hear the conversation from where we stood, but Karen's arms flailed dramatically, jabbing at the air, her face turning redder by the second. She kept pointing toward my house, then toward herself, then waving her clipboard like a weapon. One officer's expression remained calm, but the other looked increasingly irritated, especially when Karen leaned forward and tapped his chest with her finger, something even the boldest citizens avoid doing. Whatever story she was spinning, the officers weren't buying it. And when the officer finally handed her a document, some sort of official notice, Karen froze. Her jaw dropped. She shook her head, violently shouting, "This is harassment. I am the HOA. I give the rules." But the officers turned away without reacting, heading back to their cruiser. And Karen, realizing she had just performed an embarrassing meltdown in front of half the neighborhood, slammed her front door so hard the windows rattled. Minutes later, the officers approached my house. My heart tried to crawl up my throat, but when I opened the door, their expression softened. The taller one spoke gently, "Ma'am, we saw the video." Relief washed over me, so fast my knees nearly buckled. They came inside, sat at our dining table, and asked for details, every detail. Lena sat beside me, wringing her hands, guilt still clinging to her like a shadow. Mia stayed close, holding her lavender blanket, her breath steady but still slightly scattered from the trauma. The officers asked about Karen's threats, her coercion, her previous interactions, and her attempts to control medical needs under HOA authority. When they finished writing everything down, the shorter officer, a woman with kind eyes, said something that made my chest tighten with validation. What she did wasn't just harassment, it was dangerous, potentially criminal. Disabling medical equipment for a child? That's not an HOA issue. That's child endangerment. Lena gasped softly. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting that truth settle. Then the tall officer asked, "Would you like to file charges?" The question hit me harder than I expected. Yes, I wanted justice. Yes, she deserved consequences. But pressing charges meant escalation. It meant Karen wouldn't just fight back with threats, she'd go nuclear. And deep down, I knew Karen wasn't stupid. She'd tried to retaliate. Maybe through the HOA. Maybe through lies. Maybe through something worse. Still, when I looked at Mia, my fragile, brave little girl, I knew I didn't have a choice. "Yes," I said firmly. "I want to file charges." The officers nodded, their pens ready. And then everything took a strange turn. As I was describing the moment Karen forced Lena to turn the oxygen valve, the female officer paused suddenly. "Wait," she said. "What did she threaten your sister with?" Lena hesitated before whispering. She said she'd report me for trespassing and suspend my visiting privileges. The officer frowned. Suspend visiting privileges? HOA boards don't have legal authority to restrict guests. Only property owners can do that. We exchanged confused looks. "But she told Lena," the officer raised a hand. "Ma'am, that's illegal. An HOA can't block your sister from visiting your home. That's an abuse of authority." My jaw tightened. "So, she made that up?" "Yes," the officer said. "And that makes this worse. She manipulated your sister using false regulations. That's coercion." My stomach clenched. The female officer exchanged glances with her partner. "And one more thing," she added. "We checked HOA complaint records on the way here. Karen has filed more than 80 violations, but less than 10 appear valid based on HOA bylaws. 80. My mind spun. She wasn't enforcing rules, she was weaponizing them. The officers promised to follow up with the district attorney, then left. But the neighborhood didn't settle after that. If anything, things escalated. Someone posted a screenshot showing Karen edited HOA rules and emailed fake versions to homeowners. Someone else revealed she altered violation dates to push fines through faster. A third resident shared photos of her snooping around backyards at night, claiming she was checking for unauthorized fixtures. With every new message, every revelation, a disturbing picture formed. Karen didn't just believe she ran the neighborhood, she operated like a dictator. And now that she was exposed, her desperation started showing. Around sunset, while I was making dinner and Mia was coloring at the table, I heard a loud thud outside. I rushed to the door. There on my porch lay a stack of freshly printed HOA violation notices, at least 12 of them, scattered like confetti, and on top sat a handwritten note. 3 words. Sharp, venomous, threatening. You started war. My blood ran cold, because I knew this was just the beginning of Karen's retaliation. And the worst was yet to come. That night, after Karen dumped those violation notices on my porch like a declaration of war, I barely slept. Every creak in the house made me jerk upright. Every passing car made me wonder if she was plotting something worse. And the knot in my stomach only tightened when around 3:17 a.m. I heard the sound of footsteps outside. Slow, cautious, almost deliberately placed. I slid out of bed, grabbed my phone, and crept toward the window. Through the small gap in the curtain, I saw a figure pacing near my mailbox. For a moment, fear clawed at my throat, until the streetlight caught their face. It was the new HOA board member, the quiet one who had stood up against Karen. His name was Daniel. He wasn't holding any clipboard or documents. He was clutching what looked like a thick folder. I stepped outside just as he nervously approached the porch, and he nearly jumped out of his skin when he saw me. Sorry, he whispered, urgently. I didn't want anyone to see me coming here. My eyebrows pulled together. Why? What's going on? He looked around, checking every shadow, like Karen herself might spring out from behind a parked car. Then he leaned in and whispered words that sent a chill down my spine. Karen isn't acting alone. The world seemed to freeze for a second. What do you mean? He swallowed hard and handed me the folder. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, and internal HOA documents, some stamped, some unsigned, some clearly edited. But one detail made my blood turn to ice. Karen had been working closely with another board member, a man named Weston, who had been silently enabling her for years. Weston approved fake fines, forged policy updates, and even provided Karen with homeowner information she wasn't legally allowed to access. But the worst part? The email at the very top. From Weston to Karen. Short, cold, terrifying. Make them leave. Whatever it takes. My voice shook as I read it. What does this mean? Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, eyes filled with guilt. They've been targeting families they consider undesirable. Anyone who doesn't fit their idea of a perfect, quiet, uniform neighborhood. Loud kids, older residents, renters, people with disabilities. My blood boiled. My daughter? Yes, he whispered. They call her a disturbance case in their private emails. Hearing my child reduced to a label, a problem, a checkbox, an inconvenience, sent fire shooting through my chest. But Daniel wasn't done. Weston told Karen to push until you either moved out or filed a complaint so big they could legally force you to sell. My jaw dropped. That's illegal. Of course it is, he said, but they've gotten away with it multiple times. They threaten people, find them aggressively, then make their lives so miserable they eventually break and leave. I felt sick. Did the other board members know? He shook his head. No. Karen ran everything through Weston. She kept us in the dark. Why come forward now? His eyes softened, guilt flickering. Because I had no idea how far she'd go. When I saw the video of your daughter, I couldn't stay quiet. I have a sister with asthma. If anyone had done that to her, his voice cracked. I inhaled deeply, fighting the urge to crumble. So, what do they do now? Retaliate. He looked at me with a heaviness that confirmed my worst fear. Yes, and they're already planning something. My chest tightened. What? An emergency eviction petition. Tomorrow. My heart dropped. Eviction? They can't evict me. I own this house. They're going to claim you violated HOA conduct rules by inciting community hostility and threatening a board member. They want to frame you as unstable. My mind raced. This is insane. I know, he said. Then he dropped another bomb. Karen already submitted a false police report saying you attacked her. I nearly staggered. What? It's not processed yet, but if she pushes it through, it'll complicate your charges against her. The world spun around me. I grabbed the porch railing to steady myself. She wants to trap me legally. Yes, She wants to make you look like the aggressor. Over what she did to Mia? He nodded solemnly. This is how people like her operate. They strike first, then hide behind paperwork and policies. My hands shook, not with fear this time, but rage. Then he added quietly, I'm giving you this because I want you to have proof, and because she knows I'm not on her side anymore. I think she suspects me. That fear in his eyes made everything feel even more real, even more dangerous. Daniel, thank you, I whispered, clutching the folder. You didn't have to risk this. I did, he said, because Karen crossed a line she can't come back from. And Weston won't stop her unless someone stands up. Before I could respond, headlights flashed across the street, Karen's car turning the corner. Daniel stiffened instantly. I have to go. He slipped back into the shadows between houses as Karen's SUV crawled past my porch, her slow, suspicious gaze scanning my home like a predator watching prey. The SUV paused for a moment. My breath hitched. She looked directly at my window, directly at me. Then she smirked, a slow, venomous smirk, and drove on. I clutched the folder against my chest, suddenly aware that this wasn't just a neighborhood dispute anymore. This was a coordinated attack, a planned removal, a psychological war. And the people pulling the strings didn't just want control. They wanted power, total power, over the neighborhood, over the board, over us, over my daughter. But the twist wasn't just that Karen had an accomplice, or that Weston was pulling strings behind the scenes. The twist was this: they had already planned what to do if I fought back, and the next step in their plan was aimed directly at Mia. The next morning arrived with the kind of heavy silence that makes your skin crawl, the kind that warns you a storm is coming, even when the sky looks perfectly clear. I woke up early, unable to shake the dread twisting in my gut. Mia was still sleeping in her wheelchair beside my bed, her oxygen tank humming softly, her little fingers curled around her lavender blanket. I kissed her forehead, whispered that everything was going to be okay, even though a part of me feared I was lying. But then I remembered the folder Daniel gave me, the emails, the forged violations, the proof that Karen and Weston had been orchestrating a targeted attack on families like mine. That folder wasn't just evidence, it was our shield. By 8:30 a.m., I was at the police station with Lena by my side, her hands shaking but her eyes determined. When the detective saw the new documents, he called for 2 additional officers immediately. His expression hardened as he flipped through every page, muttering under his breath. Unlawful use of authority, falsified HOA documents, coercion, conspiracy. Then he looked up at me with a seriousness that sent a shiver down my spine. We're issuing a warrant today. It felt like the first real breath of hope in days, but the real confrontation would come back home, where the HOA held their so-called emergency meeting, which Karen and Weston planned specifically to ambush me with eviction charges. I arrived to find nearly the entire neighborhood gathered outside the community hall. People holding signs, people recording, people whispering angrily. Some signs read, "Justice for MIA," others, "No more bully HOA." The moment I stepped out of my car, applause broke out, not cheers of celebration, but applause of support, solidarity, fury that demanded accountability. When I walked into the hall, Karen was sitting at the table like a queen presiding over peasants, her royal blue HOA shirt ironed stiff, her golden yellow trim polished, her posture tall, her sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. Weston sat beside her, smirking like he already won. They didn't know what was coming. "We're here," Karen announced dramatically, "to address violations committed by the homeowner of 214 Birchwood Lane," but before she could finish, the doors opened, and 2 police officers stepped inside. The room snapped into stillness. Karen stiffened. Weston's confident smirk twitched. "Excuse us," the officer said, stepping forward. "We're looking for Karen Bartlett and Weston Hale." Karen stood up, so fast her chair screeched across the floor. "This is an HOA meeting. You can't interrupt, ma'am," the officer cut in. "You are under arrest for child endangerment, coercion, falsification of HOA documents, and abuse of authority." Gasps exploded around the room. Karen's face went ghost white. You can't do this. I am the HOA, she shouted, grabbing her clipboard like it held divine power. But the officer calmly took it from her hands. Not anymore. Weston bolted from his chair like a scared animal, but the second officer blocked his path. Sir, you are also under arrest for conspiracy and aiding in fraudulent enforcement of HOA penalties. He tried to argue, but the officer slapped cuffs on his wrists before he could spit out the first word. The entire community hall erupted, some cheering, some crying, some recording everything. Karen thrashed as the officers escorted her out, screaming about power, screaming about rules, screaming about how the neighborhood would collapse without her leadership. But nobody listened. Nobody cared. Nobody even looked at her with sympathy. Not after what she did to Mia. Not after the fear she inflicted on dozens of families. Outside, neighbors gathered around the police cars as Karen and Weston were placed inside, still shouting, still panicking, still grasping for power they never truly had. And then something happened that nearly brought me to tears. Mrs. Henderson stepped forward, placed her trembling hand on my shoulder and whispered, "You saved all of us." But I shook my head gently. No, I just protected my daughter. Later that afternoon, the HOA board held an emergency vote, this time without manipulation, without coercion, without fear. And in a near-unanimous decision, they abolished half of Karen's old policies, threw out dozens of fraudulent fines, reinstated community freedoms, and voted Daniel as interim president until a full election could be held. When the meeting ended, Daniel approached me quietly. "I want you to know this neighborhood is safer because of you." But I looked at Mia, now sitting in her wheelchair near the community garden, breathing easily, coloring with the pack of markers a neighbor gifted her. "No," I said softly, "it's safer because of her." The days that followed were filled with healing. Neighbors visited with meals, cards, and gifts for Mia. The community Facebook group transformed from a battlefield into a family circle. People apologized. People shared stories. People began to rebuild trust. And for the first time since moving here, I felt peace. Real peace. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the sky in cotton candy colors, Mia looked up at me with her wide, gentle eyes. "Mom, is the mean lady gone forever?" I knelt beside her and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Yes, baby. She can never hurt you again." She held my hand tightly, and her small smile carried all the strength in the world. And in that moment, I knew the fight was worth it. Every sleepless night, every tear, every fear, every confrontation, because justice was served. And my daughter, my brave, beautiful, oxygen tank-dependent warrior, finally had her safe place, her sunshine, her right to simply live. Thank you for staying with me through this emotional journey. If this story moved you, broke your heart, or made you angry for what Mia went through, then I want to ask you something important before you go. What would you have done if you saw someone trying to turn off a child's oxygen tank? Comment your honest thoughts below. I read every single comment, and your voice truly matters. And if you want more stories where justice wins, where bullies are exposed, and where families like ours fight back and rise stronger, then make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Your support helps this channel grow, helps these stories reach more people, and helps us keep raising awareness for kids like Mia. Don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and join our community of people who believe in protecting the vulnerable. See you in the next story. Stay safe, stay strong, and stay kind.